Healer 11.2 Mythic Plus tier list. I also cover a bit of what the healer does and why it is so low or high. This video is a bit late due to the fact that I waited for final balance and buff exchanges to have an accurate list. I'll try to be as objective as I can be, however I'm sure that our opinion will differ on some points. This video also has timestamps if you wish to skip, otherwise let's not make this any longer and see the rankings. Meta tier Restoration Druid. While in 11.1 it did struggle due to a few reasons, in this season it received some changes. Jesus Christ. Wildstalker and tier sets have been buffed to the point it is the preferred heroic talent in raid as well, and this currently seems the biggest output healer in Mythic Plus. But wait, there's more. Due to the fact that Boomkin is no longer a good spec, thank God, his utility kit also comes online. Vortex and Typhoon are very good, since in these dungeons mobs seem as willing to stay put as a demon hunter. Soothe sees so much usage due to enrage mechanics. The Dispel of Curse and Poison is frequently utilized. Stampeding Roar is also interesting now, as meta DKs might struggle meeting the mobility checks of the new dungeons, on which Resto excels in, by the way. Lastly, the always useful Mark of the Wild, Combat Resurrections, and Ironbark. Oh yeah, and good single target damage, should you care about that. Considering the sheer output and vast utility toolkit, which is the exact one required by these new dungeons, I see no other healer being played in the highest of keys. S tier, Restoration Shaman. So no real changes to this outside of the tier set, which overall is a positive. A lot of shamans complained about the previous Healing Rain playstyle. The main issue here is that Druid has more output and the fact that the insane utility of Shaman will probably be duplicated. Arcane Mage is 100% going to be meta, and quite possibly Demon Hunter as well, either tank or DPS. Therefore, utilities such as Bloodlusts and Offensive Dispels are not necessary. However, should the meta comp change, this healer might be seen challenging Druid, as honestly the output will be similar to last season, which was real good, and the Dispel profile is also perfect. They also received a damage buff, however considering how bad they used to be, do not expect much. Lastly, there is a possibility of Elemental Shaman being picked over Resto should a toolkit be necessary, as it seems quite good. Potential to be meta, but kept back mostly by team composition. Discipline Priest. Now, this is the healer that dominated the previous season, or so they would like you to believe. Looking at 11.1, we already start seeing other healers pop in. So, no changes means he's still the best, right? Well, not really, as you probably have already guessed from the thumbnail. The main reason of its dominance was its raid buff and shields preventing one-shots. However, 11.2 seems no longer centered around that. Even worse, the healing profile of two-man healing seems to have gotten even more prominent, which is not Discipline's favorite one. Furthermore, even the Mass Dispel seems to have little use. PI and Pain Suppression are still there though. So is the relatively low damage. There is also the risk of Shadow Priest being meta, which is somewhat mitigated by the fact that the utility is not the greatest regardless, so duplicating is not as hurtful. This class stayed still, while Druid and the new dungeon pool passed it by. However, it is still an impressive and capable healer that I am expecting to see in high keys. A tier Holy Paladin. Buffs, buffs, and buffs. Jesus, this is more than the Druid even. They even did some effort to reduce its highly RNG nature, but still not enough to stop me from calling it a slot machine. However, the issue is that Holy Paladin was an underperforming healer last season, and these merely bring it back in the middle of the pack. Output should be fine, but their overall inconsistency and lower yield out of cooldowns might hurt them a bit without party coordination. Utility is strong still, raid buffs and the usual blessing with movement, protection or combat resurrections. Damage wise, it does rather well, mostly due to its heroic talents. The other specs here are also good, but not meta, which is nice, because duplicating a class whose personality is centered around utility would be depressing. Overall, a healer that can function in most compositions. Mistweaver Monk. I'll be honest with you, this is the one that somewhat eludes me. They nerfed overall healing but buffed certain playstyles and added a tier set that helps out of cooldown healing. While prior healing has never been an issue for monks, cooldowns seem a bit lacking. Some bosses in Dawnbreaker specifically, with their repeated low cooldown high damage output, might really make this class struggle despite revival buff. Then again, maybe there is something I am missing. Damage is as always, like, honestly, why is Blizzard treating peaceful monks like they are John Wick? A pencil? This guy uses his bare hands and almost roleplays a DPS. Regardless, damage is not that relevant, however, the toolkit is. High mobility, rings for controlling mob positions, raid buffs, AD and rage, and party movement. Slightly more limited, but again, current dungeon pool makes it more appealing. The opposite of Paladin in both healing profile and utility. This class is held back by throughput, but can still function. B tier, the black sheep of the priest family, Holy Priest. Now, this was a problem last season, and it still is. Little to no changes and a slightly better tier set is not enough of a fix. I understand this is mostly happening due to its performance in Raid, and therefore being afraid to buff for Mythic Plus, but the spec was bad last season, required a major buff, and did not get it. Utility, mobility, dispels, and PIs, etc. It is very similar to Discipline, so I'll not repeat myself. Good damage output, but not enough to save it. I am unsure if you can play this without feeling like a major disadvantage, and the fact that Discipline exists just further worsens the situation. Lastly, the Preservation Evoker. The overall output has been increased somewhat through some changes and tier sets. However, this was not really its main issue. Being the only healer without a raid buff and a hampered 25-yard range is still a problem. The complexity, skill, and team coordination required makes this class still unfeasible. Outside of the underperforming raid buff, there is strong utility, however. Suitable dispels, party and personal mobility, strong externals, and mass D and rage, which again should be valued higher due to current dungeon pool. Damage output was and probably still is one of the highest, but again, making this healer function is a nightmare which I am not sure you wish to deal with. I feel like overall healer balance has gotten better and better, especially of late, and Blizzard is more willing to drop small balance patches. This season presenting no C or lower tier healers unlike the previous one. And while sure there are some outliers such as Evoker and maybe Holy Priest, I feel like you can mostly play what you like, unlike the olden days where the difference between healers was much larger. The only real issue is people are unwilling to invite or play with anything but the best class. Alas, I have already covered healing in Mythic Plus in another video. Keep healing, keep casting, and I will see you next time.